Deep dives and blue skies. Welcome back to Talking Blue with Nick, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talking Blue, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find. I'm your host, Nick. Today you are listening to episode 81 of Talking Blue, and today we are talking about a bunch of spring training stuff. So before I get you guys updated and before I get into it, let me start off with a couple of things. This is Talking Blue. As always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of the videos dropping. Like I said, you can get this podcast on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts if you prefer to listen to podcasts on those platforms. You can follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod, TikTok, on Instagram as well, and on X. You can follow myself at Talking Blue Nick. My name is Nick. I am the host of this podcast. On X, you can follow me at Talking Blue Nick. I post a lot of stuff about the Dodgers, breakdowns, a lot of video, a lot of updates, all that kind of stuff. It's all about the Dodgers. So if you're a Dodger fan and if you're just a baseball fan, I'm the perfect person to follow. You can also follow us on Reddit as well at competitive-week8715 if you like to talk about a lot of Dodger stuff on there. I know it's a weird name, but there's a bunch of Dodger stuff and Talking Blue stuff on there. You can't miss it. Reddit doesn't let you change the name. So that's all of that. So, like I said, today we're going to talk about a lot of spring training stuff. I'll get you guys up to speed really quick. We're about a week and a half into spring training so far in terms of the games being played and all that. Almost 2 weeks now of games. So we got some things to chew on we got some things to go over, some information, some games, some updates. Couple injury updates, which aren't too great, but none of them so far are very massive. A couple of guys that are playing well, a couple guys that are struggling. The WBC is getting started, so it's a really exciting time for baseball right now. And just if you're a baseball fan, it's there's a lot of really cool things to look forward to. And of course, it is a very exciting time if you're a Dodger fan as well. So today, like I said, I'm going to give you guys some updates. First, I'm going to just start off with some news and updates, whether it's come from Dave Roberts or just kind of things that have come out from the Dodgers overall. So the first thing is Blake Snell. He will start the season on the IL. It was pretty much known already. I forgot if this came out before my last podcast, which was about a week and a half ago. But it is confirmed that he will start the season on the IL. He wasn't being ramped up. They're again. It sounds like they're just slow playing Blake Snell. So hopefully it isn't necessarily an injury thing, because he did have a pretty big shoulder injury last year that cost him like 3 or 4 months. So they are going to start with him on the IL. So that obviously means there is some openings in the Dodgers rotation. But then the next really bigger news, like I said, that was a little bit known already. Gavin Stone, who started to feel some shoulder discomfort in the surgically repaired shoulder that he had. He started to feel some pain, so he underwent some scans, and basically is diagnosed with inflammation, and he'll be shut down, sidelined for the next few weeks. So that pretty much puts him at no chance at making the opening day roster. So the Dodgers will have some openings in their rotation. There's a chance they don't really start the year off with a 6-man rotation like we all would have thought. But it does open the door from some other guys that we'll talk about that we've seen so far in spring. That does suck for Gavin Stone. They did classify it as a setback. There always are like funky words that you got to read through when you're talking with a manager and hearing what they have to say when they diagnose an injury. They did label it as a setback, which means that it wasn't enough of a red flag, given that he's coming back from a major shoulder surgery to sideline him. So that's disappointing, obviously, for Gavin, that he missed all of 2025, and he came back, made his first start about a week ago, looked pretty good. The velocity was pretty much the same as it was before the injury. The command, I think he only threw 1 inning. So that does suck that after a bullpen that happened. But we'll see what happens going down the line into spring and then eventually into the season. So probably won't see Gavin Stone, I would imagine, until sometime in like May or something like that, because I just think that everything now gets pushed back. Probably won't start pitching on a mound again until the end of spring training, and then he'll have to get on the mound and actually build up in games, which would be done in the minor leagues. So the earliest I think we would see Gavin, I should say, is May. Who knows down the line. Really the only other injury updates, Tommy Edman has began swinging a bat in the cage, but it's unlikely that he'll participate in Cactus League games, in spring training games. So by the time Tommy Edman is ready to play in games, probably will be sometime late March, early April, where he'll be beginning an actual rehab. So we'll see what happens there. So that's pretty much all the injury updates. A couple other cool things is Dave Roberts talking about where certain guys will hit in the lineup. It has pretty much been confirmed that Kyle Tucker is going to hit second and Freddie Freeman is going to be the cleanup hitter hitting in the fourth spot, which does mean that Mookie Betts will hit third. I've gone really back and forth about what I've thought it will be. Obviously, we always knew that Shohei was going to hit leadoff, and then Dave Roberts did come out and say, like, I think it was at Kyle Tucker's press conference, that he envisioned Tucker hitting second. So it was, I didn't think the Dodgers were going to have three straight lefties hit in the, to start off the game. So it kind of made sense. Mookie hitting third, Freddie in the fourth spot. That could change, obviously. And I do think that if there is a lefty on the mound, there's a chance that Tucker and Mookie could flip-flop. But that's pretty cool. And so far in spring, we have seen when those guys are in the lineup, Mookie's who just played his first two games, was hitting third both times at short. And then Freddie Freeman has also been in the fourth spot a couple times as well. So those are the updates. Now we'll keep it moving, and we're going to talk about a couple different things. First off, I'll start with a couple of the guys, current guys, nothing new or anything like that, but two guys that I've noticed this spring based on their comments and things we've seen in spring, really just from one guy because the other guy hasn't played a lot. So these two guys are Teoscar Hernandez and Mookie Betts. So Mookie Betts, at the time of this recording, which is Tuesday, March 3rd, the Dodgers are in the middle of playing the Guardians. I believe the game just ended, so they just won 5-4. So they win their ninth they get their ninth win in Cactus League play. So they played pretty good so far this spring. But Mookie Betts has only played in two games. He played over the weekend. Sunday was his first game, and then Monday they said that they liked the idea of Mookie starting a little bit later this spring. Obviously, it was one of the most interesting years for Mookie Betts in his career. Obviously, it was his first time playing shortstop full time at the big league level. Played the whole year there. No second base, no outfield, nothing like that. And we all know that he played really, really good defensively there. But we all know what happened with the bat. He was basically a league average hitter, and a lot of that was saved from a really great stretch throughout, August and September. He had a really bad season, and like I said, that hot stretch at the end of the year even saved a lot of his season to just be a slightly above league average hitter. But the Dodgers have slow played him so far in spring to where he's now just playing his first couple games a week and a half into spring, and he's come out and made a couple of comments. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but I do know that he has pretty much come out and said this is the best he's felt physically in terms of his body and in terms of his swing and his preparation in terms of just feeling good in the box and able to hit. It's the best he's felt in years, so I would imagine that's probably since 2023, 2024. Those were really good years that he had offensively. 2024, he got hit in the hand and broke his hand, so he dealt with injuries that year. Not really his fault. 2023, though, he was legitimately one of the 3 to 4 best players in the game and was close to winning his second MVP. He's come out and said that he's in great shape. We all know that Mookie's season got off to a really bad start when he got that illness last year. I forgot if it was in Tokyo that he got the illness, or if it was before that, and then when they were in Tokyo is when he was sick. I forgot which came first, but we all know that he dealt with the injury and lost a bunch of weight, and it kind of affected him how he was feeling physically. Obviously, he got off to the really bad season. We don't know. Obviously, we'll never know was his rough offensive season a correlation to was it correlated with that illness, or was it just the beginning of the fall off for Mookie? Was it just an off season? We never will know the truth to that. But obviously Mookie is determined to show that last year was pretty much due. The offensive drop off was pretty much due to that illness, getting off to that rough start. So I think that's interesting. He said that this is the best he's felt in years. Dave Roberts has even said he expects Mookie to be right back in MVP conversations and just kind of to be that consistent, like one of the better players in the game. We'll see. Obviously, like Dave Roberts is the manager, so what else is he going to say? But I think that is interesting that Mookie did come out and say, this is the best I've ever felt. I would imagine that he spent this entire offseason just being prepared to come into camp physically strong and physically ready to go, and then really just ready to do whatever it takes to get back to being an elite offensive player. We know that the last couple years, things have been so crazy with him in terms of where he's going to play position, defensively. Like he began playing a lot more infield 2022, 2023. And then 2024, he was supposed to come into camp and be the opening day second baseman. He had to go over and play shortstop. He eventually, after the injury, went back out to right. And then we know that last year he was preparing to play the full season at shortstop, and he put in a ton of work, so much work. I mean, he even talked about how he would literally put in hours of time and defensive work, preparation before the game just to be ready. And it all worked, and it did work out in him being legitimately one of the better defensive shortstops in the game, which again, just doesn't get talked enough about how crazy that is. But I would imagine that going into this offseason, he probably, felt more comfortable. I proved to myself that I can play shortstop at the big league level and my defense will be okay. Now I need to focus on coming into camp in great shape, physically prepared for the full season, and really what can I do with my swing to make it as locked in. He even said something to the effect as, normally at this time in camp, I'm taking a million swings, trying to find anything to get my swing comfortable, and right now I feel ready to go and it feels locked in. So that's great. And I do believe that Mookie's going to have a big bounce back season. I don't know if he'll be in the MVP conversations, but later in spring we'll get into predictions, and I'll probably even make a full stat line prediction for everyone on the team, their on base percentages, their OPS, and all that stuff, projections kind of. And I fully believe Mookie Betts will have an OPS in the 800s again, and I believe he'll be a 25 to 30 home run guy again. Again, I don't know that we'll see the 900 OPS, the MVP Mookie, but I think that in this really good lineup, him being healthy, him being physically ready to go, I think that we're going to see a big bounce back year. So that's pretty cool to see from Mookie, and he looks so good so far in spring. Now, another guy is Teoscar Hernandez. So we all know in 2025, Teoscar dealt with a couple things. Obviously, we know the biggest thing was, how he played defensively in right field and how much he struggled out there. We know he's going to go over to left field this year. He has come into camp in a much better shape. I believe he said he's lost 20 pounds. I could be wrong. It might only be 10 or 15 pounds, but it is noticeable how slimmer he looks when you see him on TV in the batter's box. And he's played really well so far this spring. I've seen a lot of hard hit balls off of his bat. And he just said, again, more comments to the media that I don't have the exact quote, but I have heard that, the quotes, the effect of he feels as good as he's felt in a while, being slimmer, feeling more athletic, and, feeling healthy, because something that gets forgot about his season last year was that he did deal with injuries. A lot of people, I think, a lot of people give Mookie Betts the benefit of the doubt about his illness, but a lot of people don't give the same benefit of the doubt to Teoscar, that he dealt with a serious groin/hamstring injury. If you go look at the numbers, pretty much through the first 30 games of the year, through April, Teoscar was having every bit as good as a start to the season as he did in 2024, if not better. I believe he had an OPS in the 900s. Like, he was raking. Then in Miami, he got hurt. I was actually at that game. Something again. I at the time it was originally a groin, but then I think they said hamstring or vice versa. So some kind of lower leg injury. And ever since then, when he came back, I think he even rushed his comeback because he was supposed to be on the IL for like a month, and I think it only lasted like not even 3 weeks. And he was kind of chasing his tail the rest of the year. Did not crush left-handed pitching as much as he normally does. So another guy that, one of the guys that are, of the team, none of these new guys that were, prospects or anything like that were getting to learn. Mookie and Teo have come into spring in great shape, and it's good to see. And I would not be surprised to see both of those guys have major years, especially with the great lineup that they're in and the guys around them. And like Mookie Betts is going to be surrounded by like 3 of the best left-handed hitters in the game. And then Teoscar Hernandez is going to be hitting 6th or 7th in the lineup, So that's those are two things that have been noticeable to me in spring. Some of their comments and some of their play. And yeah, so let's go to the next thing, and that is the second base job. I talked about this in my previous podcast, kind of like previewing things to look forward to in spring. So it makes sense. Let's take a look at it. Second base job, we all know, pretty much entails Alex Freeland, Miguel Rojas, and then Hae-Sung Kim. So one of the things I just want to correct from my last podcast is that I talked about the guys that are going to be in the WBC. Will Smith will be playing for America, and then Shohei and Yamamoto will be playing for Team Japan. I actually forgot that Hae-Sung Kim will be playing for South Korea, or I forget if it's just Korea. I think it's just Korea. He'll be in the WBC playing for Korea, representing them, his hometown, home country, and then Edwin Diaz will also be representing Puerto Rico. So one of the things that's kind of interesting to me is both Freeland, but really Kim, have played well and have showed some good things this spring. And but obviously Kim just left to go play for the WBC. So it's kind of interesting to me. I was wondering, like, does Kim going to play for his home country team in the WBC, does that affect or does that kind of hurt him in terms of making the roster for the Dodgers? We'll see if it does. Obviously, he still has time, and he's well within his right to go represent his country. And I don't think the Dodgers had a discussion with him about not doing that or anything like that. But you got to wonder if it crossed Kim's mind that if he goes and plays for his country and in the WBC, obviously the Dodgers will be paying attention, and the Korea could get eliminated pretty quick, and Kim could be back in like not even a week and a half. But anyways, when you're battling out for a position with another guy, as in Alex Freeland, you want to be there, get as many reps as you can, get in front of the Dodgers as much as you can. And Kim had got off to a really good start. He did go deep a couple games ago, hit a home run to right field. He's made a lot more contact. He actually played one game in center field as well, which again kind of shows that him and Freeland aren't necessarily battling out for the second base job as much as it's that final roster spot. But obviously I just have it as second base job because they're both primarily second basemen. But he was in center field, and he did look a lot more comfortable than he did a year ago. A year ago, he was kind of just one of those classic speedy guys who don't necessarily have a exact spot on the roster, so let's check him out in other positions. He looked a lot more comfortable and is clearly put in a lot more work to be a serviceable big league outfielder. He made a couple of nice plays, and obviously it helps that he's really athletic and really fast. But that's something that crossed my mind is, does Kim going to represent his country in the WBC? Does it kind of hurt him if, Freeland plays well? Does Kim, does he ultimately have to start the year in the minor leagues? And it might ultimately not have anything to do with that. It might just be, again, that it's just who won out, who played better. I do think, again, that the Dodgers, if they were being honest, they do have concerns about Kim's swing and how it will produce in the big league level. But he is still, a talented guy, in great shape, great base runner, great speed. I think that if he played a full big league season at second base, he would be a really good defender, and it would have really good defensive metrics. Now, Freeland, I found some cool info on him, and let me give some credit to the person who put this out on X really quick. I found somebody put some good numbers out there about Alex Freeland and his plate discipline, so I didn't want to leave that person. Austin Brubaker on X, at AustinBrew99. He put out some good numbers and some good metrics about Alex Freeland's plate discipline. That has always been one of his calling cards, is that he has really, really good plate discipline. So so this was a couple games ago, so I'm sure this isn't updated, but Alex Freeland has seen 48 pitches outside of the strike zone. He's only swung at 2 of them. So that means that his out-of-zone swing percentage is only 4.2%. That's elite. That would be up there with guys of Juan Soto's caliber, Aaron Judge, like the guys who have some of the best plate discipline in the game. Freeland is one of those guys that has great plate discipline, which of course is always a great trait to lead to having great on-base numbers and stuff like that. And he's always been known as a guy who plays great defense. So I just wanted to give that I just want to put those numbers out there that Freeland is controlling his strike zone really good, and then as well, obviously Kim playing well, multiple positions, and we'll see what happens in terms of that last final roster spot. There are a couple other guys who are in there. Nick Senzel, former Red, is in camp for the Dodgers, and he's put up some pretty good numbers as well. Keston Hiura, another guy, former Brewer, who is also in camp, and he hit a home run a couple days ago too. I remember that while I was watching. And then the last guy, Santiago Espinal, who was actually a former All-Star with the Blue Jays. Last year was in Cincinnati, second baseman, third baseman type of player. I think he's even spent time in the outfield. Short guy, but a guy who's at times has put up decent numbers at the plate, a little versatile, and he's also had very good numbers against left-handed pitching in his career. Not very good, but pretty good. And he's also opened some eyes to this spring. So Nick Senzel, Santiago Espinal, Keston Hiura, other guys who are technically battling out for that last roster spot. And I do think Espinal has a real shot, actually, from things I've seen so far in spring, and a couple of people on Twitter I've seen seem to kind of like his game so far. Between Freeland and Kim, with obviously Miguel Rojas kind of being the leader of that second base job. So we'll keep it moving. 20 minutes in, we'll go to some of the pitchers. Obviously, I already talked about Blake Snell and Gavin Stone, so they kind of we know they're not going to be there on opening day. Stone just got hurt, but again, I don't think it's too bad. Both guys dealing with shoulder stuff. So River Ryan, Justin Robleski, two guys who will definitely be in contention for that to be in the opening day roster. Now, I do think that there's a chance the Dodgers just kind of go with a traditional 5-man rotation. So I think that it's possible that River Ryan starts the year in the minor leagues and Robleski is that 5th guy, or River Ryan could even come out of the bullpen. Now, River Ryan has definitely turned some heads early on in spring. I think he's only made 2 appearances. A little interesting, he's come out of the bullpen. He has not started a game. So I wonder if that is kind of a little bit of a preview of what the Dodgers are thinking. I don't think they look at River Ryan as a reliever going forward, but I do think that they could kind of look at him as similar to what Ben Kasparius was a year ago, to start the year in the bullpen, but be built up enough to kind of throw multiple innings. And his stuff has definitely looked really electric. Again, I talked about him in my things to look forward to, podcast going into spring training. His first outing, he averaged 97 miles an hour on his four-seam fastball, and he also averaged 90.6 on the slider. Got a couple whiffs on a really nasty, explosive slider. And then he also pitched again today, again out of relief, following Roki Sasaki. He was averaging 97.5, so almost averaging 98 today. Again, the slider was 91.1. He got two whiffs today, one on the four-seamer and then one on his cutter. So a really interesting pitcher, River Ryan. Again, he's kind of like an older prospect, but he has a handful of pitches. He has like 3 legit pitches that he'll throw, all of them, like four-seamer, sinker, slider, cutter, changeup, curveball, and he looks like he could definitely be a weapon for the Dodgers. So him coming out of the bullpen, I just wonder if that's if they're showing their hand a little bit, if maybe they kind of view him as someone who could start the year out of the pen. Again, I don't know if that will be on the big league like opening day roster, but his stuff looks really, really good. And it's something definitely interesting, to follow throughout spring, especially with, Snell and Stone getting hurt. But if I were to make a prediction, it would be Robleski in the rotation to start the year, River Ryan in the bullpen. I'm not sure, again, if it'll be on the opening day roster, but I do like what I've seen from River Ryan so far. He looks really fluid out there. He's really smooth. He's got nice mechanics. He's got explosive stuff, not just with the fastball. His off-speed and breaking balls are very good as well. And then I just wanted to highlight a couple guys as well before I really get to my last thing that I'll talk about, which is Roki Sasaki. 2 guys that I wanted to just highlight, the 2 top prospects for the Dodgers, Josue DePaula and Zaire Hope. 2 top 100 prospects. The Dodgers have a lot of top 100 prospects. They are 2 of them. They are very highly rated, though, in the top 100 overall, and they are the Dodgers' 2 top prospects. I'll probably at some point later in spring training, I'll do a whole podcast about these 2 guys. Probably around the spring breakout. If you don't know, Major League Baseball the last couple of years does this cool like prospect game where it's called the spring breakout, where the Dodgers play all of their top prospects and minor league guys. But Josue DePaula, Zaire Hope have been 2 of the most talked about things in all of Dodger camp so far, not just prospect-wise. Josue DePaula is the number 15 overall prospect in all of baseball, I believe. And then Zaire Hope, I want to say, is 27. But 2 young guys who have who are both outfielders, both hit left-handed. Josue DePaula so far in camp has a 500 on base and a 944 OPS. Zaire Hope, 421 on base, 859 OPS. They are both hitting the ball super hard. They haven't been getting a ton of starts, but they do come into the game later on, and then they just have been showing all their tools. I mean, Zaire Hope's played some good defense in the corners. DePaula, his defense is not really his calling card. It's his bat, and he's had a couple of multi-hit games, a lot of extra base hits. So they've been really showing off, why they are the highly touted prospects, and a lot of people are getting excited about them. I don't know that those guys will debut in 2026. I do think that DePaula has a shot, but I do think like with the acquisition of Tucker and obviously Andy Pages is young. They believe in Teoscar Hernandez. Like, it's going to be a little bit harder, especially given their age. I do believe they're both 20 years old and both turned 21 this year. I know DePaula turns 21 sometime this year. Zaire Hope might have just turned 21. But 2 guys that are going to get a lot of opportunities this year, and you should see them in the big leagues by 2027. But there's a lot of excitement about them, about the way that they hit, the way that the ball sounds off their bat, their electric bat speed, all that stuff, and their really good plate discipline. 2 guys that have really, really good plate discipline, especially DePaula. DePaula is one of the more exciting bats in all baseball. And again, later on in spring, I'll definitely dive into them. I think I really want to make a podcast about them and just talk about, really get to know them more, because they are really a part of the future of the Dodgers' plans, So that was some interesting prospects. So the last thing that we'll talk about today is Roki Sasaki. I really wanted to get to Roki and talk about his 2 starts that he's made so far this spring. Like I said, the Dodgers spring training game today, March 3rd, just wrapped up. Roki Sasaki was the starter in that game. So he's made 2 starts so far in spring. The thing that I was most interested to look at coming into this spring was Roki Sasaki. And the thing that I was most interested to see with Roki Sasaki was his pitch mix and specifically two of the new pitches that he's going to feature, the cutter and the sinker. Now, early on in spring, 2 starts through, Sasaki hasn't looked great. It's not fair to fully categorize him as he's having a really bad spring or anything like that, but the command has not been great. So we all know in 2025, Sasaki, when he was a starter the first month and a half, he had a ton of issues. The velocity fluctuated a lot. The fastball also got crushed a lot. The fastball did not get many swings and misses. He didn't really get many swings and misses overall. And then the walks, he had really bad command. He had a lot of games where he was walking 4 or 5 guys a game, and he was constantly behind in the count. Really, the only thing he kind of showed was that his splitter is for real. He has a great splitter, and it's nasty, and it's very unique. And the spin rate is just so unique, and it's, all that stuff. Other than that, that was really all he showed. And then we all know what he did in the postseason, and he was great as a reliever. So I talked about this. I was really curious to see what does the new cutter look like. A cutter is a really valuable pitch that you can use to get off the barrel, jam left-handed hitters. And Sasaki has already thrown a slider before, so I was really interested to see does he kind of have a cutter and a slider, a low mid-90s cutter, and then the slider that he already had. I'm a little bit disappointed to see that the cutter that he's added is not really a cutter. So a lot of times with pitchers, when they kind of name their own pitches. You saw this with Clayton Kershaw for years. He threw a slider. Some people called it a cutter. He didn't like when people called it a cutter. He liked it as a slider. Some guys throw sliders or curveballs, and they call it one thing, but it's kind of classified as another thing. Dustin May, for the longest time, used to call his breaking ball a curveball, but it was so obviously a slider, slurve, sweeper, whatever you want to call it. So there is technically no definition for what the pitch is. But if you were to ask me, a cutter doesn't necessarily have a ton of break or drop. A cutter is a little slide, a little bit of movement. If you're throwing a cutter and you're right-handed, a little bit of cut to the left. Kenley Jansen, Emmanuel Clase, those guys were real cutters. Mariano Rivera, obviously, guys like that. And when you see guys throw an actual slider, it has it has more drop to it, more break. It's a little bit bigger. Sasaki's cutter that he's throwing, to me, just looks like a regular slider. In his first outing of spring, it averaged 87.1 miles an hour, and then today it averaged 86.8. What I'm not disappointed is that it actually doesn't look like a bad pitch. It does have some pretty good movement to it. It doesn't look like anything crazy, but it does look like a decent slider. But it's not really a cutter. I was expecting, if you guys are familiar, Brusdar Graterol, Blake Trinan, Walker Buehler, Evan Phillips, those guys throw cut fastball, cutters, and then they also have sliders. Sasaki, this cutter that he's throwing is really just a slider. So he has not looked great early on in spring. You got to admit that. The command has been not great at all. I mean, if you watched his first inning today against the Guardians, he literally could not throw a strike. He walked the first guy, Stephen Kwan, on 4 pitches, gave up a single, or I should say a double, but it was a single into left center. Kwan went first to third. Andy Paz made a dumb throw to third base, so the back runner went to second base. Then I'm pretty sure he walked Jose Ramirez to load the bases, and then he gave up a grand slam to Kyle Manzardo on a fastball. But then he actually didn't finish the inning. One of the funny things about spring training is you can actually have a pitcher get taken out of the inning and then bring in a reliever and then bring in the original starter in the next inning. So that's what Sasaki did. He didn't finish that first inning. Came back out, pitched the second, pitched the third, had clean innings. I think he might have only allowed 1 walk, but He did have one strikeout, I believe, and then he had a couple pop-ups, a couple groundouts. Was much better at pitching in the zone. So, I'll start off with a couple of positives. Is that the velocity has been there for Sasaki, which is a good thing so far. Now, again, he's only pitched like 4 or 5 innings, 4 2/3 or 4 1/3, whatever it is. His first outing, he averaged 96 miles an hour, or I should say 96.9, so basically 97 miles an hour. And then this last start in today, he averaged 98 even. So if you've watched him, he has pretty much sat like 96 to 99. So velocity is there. It's not really dipping crazy. His first game, he did throw a ton of cutter sliders. He threw 47% fastball, 25% cutter, and then only 17% splitter. So he didn't throw a ton of that split. Today, 38% fastball, 33% cutter, 24% splitter. So he's definitely like early on in camp is trying to figure out the new cutter slider that he's throwing. So again, I've said before, like spring training is not really about the numbers. Not for everyone. Sometimes for some guys it is. So it's not completely fair to like look at his numbers or look at his like ERA and say, really what you need to be looking for with Sasaki is command, particularly with the fastball. Is he getting swings and misses? What does the velocity look like? And then how do these new pitches work for him? And how are they like, how is he mixing it up and all that? But, the command so far early on in spring has been really bad. And I just wonder, like, what did Sasaki do last postseason with that crazy command that he had where he was just pounding the strike zone with his fastball? I wonder, like, what did he do to fix that? And then, like, so far in spring, he doesn't have the command. Again, I don't want to kill him. I saw a couple people on Twitter who were like, there's no way Sasaki can be on the opening day roster. I don't think that's crazy. He hasn't looked good so far in spring. And obviously, like, as a big league starter, he just hasn't looked good. But it's still so early, and I just don't think that's completely fair. He did bounce back after that disaster first inning today. He still got a lot of time. He still has so much time. I think the next time we see him pitch in about a week, he'll be a little bit more built up to try to go 4 innings. He'll probably use more of that splitter, and we'll kind of get a real taste and but he did make some comments after the game. He said his upper body felt off in his mechanics. He was able to get things more in sync for the second and third inning. He was able to find something that he could trust, but he still needs to work on it to produce in the game. Basically, what he's saying is that his command, his mechanics felt off in the upper body, which led to just having zero command. And when you're out there on the mound, mostly, usually pitchers kind of have like a mental cue or a physical cue that can kind of lock in their mechanics, that can kind of fix things. And so that's what he's kind of alluding to, that in the second and third inning, I was able to kind of fix things and find something that I could really trust. That's what he kind of means by that. So all eyes will be on him for his next start. I'm glad. I didn't get to see his first start live. I kind of had to go back and watch it. Today I was able to watch every pitch. As always, the splitter looked really nasty. He did get some swings and misses on that. I think he only had 1 strikeout today. But he had 1 whiff on the cutter, and then he had 3 on the splitter. So one thing remains true with Sasaki is that he's got an elite splitter, and he's got a nasty pitch with that. And he's got somewhere to work there. And so far earlier in spring, he has the velocity that he's been accustomed throughout his professional career. But he's got to find the command with the forcing fastball, because when you're a splitter pitcher like he is, and you throw that kind of unique pitch, it won't work if you're not throwing strikes with the fastball. Because anytime they see a splitter, which you're trying to get chase on, you're trying to get swings and misses on, any hitter is just going to take that pitch. So you got to be able to prove that you can get the fastball in and around the strike zone. And then it'll lead to more whiffs on that unique splitter. But the cutter slider does not look like a horrible pitch. I'm just a little bit more disappointed to see that it's not a cutter, it's a slider. But I did see a couple good ones that he threw. He actually seemed to have like decent command on it. There were some times that it looked kind of nasty, sometimes not so much. I do remember he threw a good one to a left-handed hitter, got a nice whiff. So it is definitely, once I take out the disappointment that is not an actual cutter, it's a slider. It is a pitch that I can get excited for with Sasaki, especially being able to throw it to right-handers, but also some left-handers as well, kind of like that down and in slider. So it's a work in progress with Roki. Roki is a work in progress. His command, his mechanics, and all that. I think that if anyone is out there saying like he can't be on the big league roster, it's too early for that. Because what if he comes out and dominates his next spring? Looks like he did similar to. I know we're a long way away from that, but like, what if he looks great in his next outing? Are you still going to be saying that? Like, he's still very young and still has a lot of time to grow. But you have to admit that there are definitely some concerns, especially with all the concerns are about his fastball. Like, his fastball is very hittable, doesn't get a lot of whiffs, and then he also is just not having command on that pitch. But he showed some good things in those second two innings. So we'll probably see him. Today is Tuesday, so we'll probably see Roki next Monday, maybe even Sunday, because he didn't throw a ton of pitches. But there's positives and there's negatives with Roki. Not a ton of positives, but there are some, and we'll keep going. So those are all my thoughts so far early in spring. Some pretty interesting things so far. The WBC is about to get kicked off. Actually, there's been some exhibitions today. I do believe the Dodgers will face Mexico tomorrow, so that's pretty cool. And then by the end of this week, we're actually going to get like real WBC games, like country versus country and all that stuff. So some pool play. So that's all some cool things to look forward to. Like I said, Hae-Sung Kim will be playing for Korea, Edwin Diaz, Puerto Rico, the two Dodger Japanese stars, Yamamoto, and of course Ohtani will be playing for Japan. They'll be heavily favored, as well as USA, which will have Will Smith on the team as well. So thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back in another week or so, a couple days, to talk about some more spring training stuff. As always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcast, on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of the new videos dropping. You can follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod. You can follow myself at Talking Blue Nick on X, and then you can also follow us on Reddit as well at competitive-week8715. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back in a couple days to talk about some more Dodgers spring training topics.